The Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, has acknowledged the enormous and terrible consequences of the contaminated blood scandal, but stopped short of apologising for government failures.
Well, he is the first serving minister to give evidence at the infected blood inquiry, which is looking into the worst treatment disaster in the history of the NHS.
Many people from the south were among 30,000 patients who contracted hepatitis C, HIV and other diseases after being given infected blood products in the 1970s and 80s. Much of it was imported from America, where high-risk groups like prisoners and drug addicts were paid to donate their plasma. Almost 3,000 people have now died.
Well, Rachel Hepworth is now live in London for the hearing. So, Rachel, what did Mr Hancock have to say?
Well, Fred, the focus of his testimony today was on what the government has or indeed hasn't done to support those who've been impacted by the scandal. Campaigners will tell you it has never been enough. He did, however, acknowledge that when he became the Health Secretary, he was aware that failings had happened.
In my role as Secretary of State, I acknowledge the pain and the suffering, not only of the errors that led to this harm on people's lives, but also a sense that redress wasn't properly considered, and that people felt their voices weren't heard.
Well, those voices have been trying to be heard for a very long time now, and some of those affected were here at the inquiry today to listen to the evidence. The nature of the infections meant that haemophiliacs were particularly susceptible, and almost 100 boys at the specialist Treloar school in North Hampshire were infected. Very few have survived. Those who did have vowed to keep fighting in their friends' memories.
It's so sad. It seems the government holds a carrot out on occasions, now and again, that they'll suggest something, people get their hopes up and those hopes dashed. I've seen so many people die.
We've lived with this for 40 years plus, and we've seen so many people pass away. All of our Treloar school friends have passed away, both my brothers have passed away. And for the living, for ourselves, that we need that clarification that we are making the breakthroughs that we hoped for, say, for the last 40 years.
Finally, they are now admitting that things and mistakes were made. Hence, you have Matt Hancock here this afternoon, and a few more ministers to follow during this coming year and maybe next year. But yeah, I'm wishful thinking, but I hope they're listening, and I believe they've started to.
Well, they have long been campaigning for better support payments, and the government has indeed taken the first step towards that, announcing that a compensation framework will be brought into effect once this inquiry has finished. But that won't be for another year at least. That will be too late, say campaigners, for many people who've already died, and they say that victims are still dying at a rate of 1 every 3 days.
An absolute tragedy. Rachel Hepworth live for us in London. Thank you very much.